All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Could we get a roll call, please, Gil?
Yes. Justin Ping is absent, still not on Zoom.
I'm on Zoom. Hello. Can you folks hear me? I'm on Zoom.
Yes, we can hear you, Justin.
Thanks.
All right, Mark Johnson, here. Dan Kavanaugh, here. And Darren Fisher.
Here. So our first order of business is approving the minutes from our last meeting. So we've all had a chance to review those minutes.
Yeah. I would move to approve those minutes as recorded. I'll second that.
Where can the public get those minutes? Are they on a website?
Yes, so they are on our, on the city website. If you follow, there's the link for agendas and meeting minutes, everything that we have in front of us right now, the minutes and some of the other information that we have is all on that website, posted a few days ago. It's up there, so it's available for the members of the public who are just starting to come to these meetings. Every agenda we get and everything that we have, we posted about, is it 3 days ahead of time?
For the Thursday meeting, it's on Monday.
Okay, so we posted on Monday for the Thursday meeting, so this will all be accessible to you about 3 days ahead of time. Same, at the same time we get it as well, so. So we had a motion second, and then we'll just do a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I see an aye and nod from Justin there. All right, so the minutes have been approved. Now it's time for visitor or public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public to comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. So if you want to approach the podium, give your name and address and try to limit your remarks to about 3 minutes. We'd be happy to hear from anyone and everyone.
Hi, Shirley Brookline, 285 Shooting Star Drive. I just wanted to voice my appreciation for the last meeting that the three of us that were here as the public were afforded the opportunity to ask some questions and have some conversation. And I would really hope that that could be a standard part of your meetings, that you'd be able to figure out some way for more than just this beginning opportunity. So I just think that it would make the whole process much stronger and beneficial if the community felt that they had more opportunity for participation as the process goes along. Thanks.
Sure. Anyone else want to talk to us? All right, I'm seeing no one else coming to approach us, so we'll move into our new business. Talking about our public participation plan. Susan?
Eric,
Eric?
So we gave them two plans that have been adopted. One is the Kalispell plan and the other is the Helena plan. And these are pretty much kind of based on the model that has been going around. These two plans are pretty similar. I think Helena has, their own type of public forum thing, so that was one of the few differences that I saw in their outreach. And Thunder Falls, we don't have that yet, but essentially it lists out the how essentially we would work our new growth policy based on the new legislation, and provide the opportunity as we're working through the plan for particularly outreach to try to get, whether it's print or social media or whatever it is, to get the word out that there's, for example, a document that the public can look at and then they can comment on and provide those comments to us either in person or email or handwritten letters, similar to the process that we already have. So essentially, that's more or less, what we have. It also, discusses, you know, the future land use, the documents, the zoning and subdivision, and essentially, you know, first comes the growth policy, then comes the zoning and subdivision. And each of those documents will kind of have, a work plan where we kind of work through a draft, and as those drafts are being formatted, there'll be, the ability for the public to participate and, give their comments, and then, you know, we can also, and here's the opportunity for, staff to address, you know, if there's a question in that comment, we can try to address those questions. So it's not, you know, it's not extremely extensive, but it is a good format and a good layout. And I guess what we're looking for from you is to look through these, you know, maybe pick one, and then if there's certain changes that commission would like to see or add or strike or whatever, then we would basically get a draft that we could then prepare and get out, and then hold our public hearing at potentially our next regular meeting. Okay.
So just to be clear, our goal tonight is to pick a rough draft and then tell staff to tighten it up, and then we'd have a public hearing on it next meeting.
Right, we'd give notice of that hearing, and then you would make a recommendation to the city council. City council will then hold the subsequent hearing and adoption. They would adopt it by resolution. So, and the main difference with Helena, and Helena had that timeline, but you'll notice that Helena adopted their land use, the public participation plan, and then appointed their commission. And so they were, well, out of the 10 cities, all kind of did something a little different, but as Eric mentioned, this does fairly well match the model that Department of Commerce and the task force had sent around, right? So it starts out, of course, with the statutory requirements and then what the plan is, since this is the new piece, right? So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want to start at the beginning. I mean, intro's the intro, right? That it's required now under the new. Did they say Malupa? Once again.
I've been calling it Malupa, I don't know, but that sounds like a.
There's so many acronyms now, but anyway, so if you want to just go through it, you'll see that they were pretty much the same. But because Helena did their participation plan first, they had added that time.
So these are really similar. Where did the information come from, the initial drafts on both of these, do you know?
Well, Department of Commerce tasked there's a group of planners meeting, and with Kelly Lynch, so the League of Cities and Towns and the task force with Department of Commerce kind of said, here's a model, right? Because you had to include, you know, Malupa requirements, because that's in the statute. And then from there, so this was the model that group put together.
Thank you.
Yeah, with that, should we just sort of go through the Kalispell plan?
Yeah.
And, talk about that. As we discussed, we have the Kalispell plan and the Helena plan. They're pretty similar. It's like the big differences I saw was the timeline, that Helena had included, and also I think Helena included some, for lack of better terms, some fluffier language. And which is all well and fine, if that's what they wanted, but I'm more of a brass tacks guy myself. But yeah, Susan, Susan Anderode, would you like to take us through this, and for the benefit of the audience, you can see on either screen, it has what we're talking about and what we're going through here.
Okay, so just the introduction, Montana Land Use Planning Act. Malupa codified in Title 76, Chapter 25 MCA, creates a comprehensive update. So this is just a, obviously we say City of Columbia Falls. So under this, we're required to provide a public participation plan that creates the framework for communication and engagement. So to ensure access to public information and continuous and ongoing public involvement for the adoption of a future land use plan and associated regulations. So this, this is the new part. This is that first piece. How do we communicate everything? And so this is standard. I think that in the two drafts that we have, this introduction and Malupa requirements are identical. So. And then public participation plan is the beginning of a process to replace the city's current growth policy, zoning regulations and subdivision regulations to comply with the Malupa. It will also guide public participation for future amendments and updates to those documents. So it requires public participation plan, provide for the dissemination of draft documents, opportunities for written and verbal comments, public meetings after effective notice, electronic communication, including online access, and an analysis of and response to public comments. And that's straight out of that statute. So then public participation opportunity, and it was laid out fairly well, I think, in the statute and what you need to have, hence the model. So public participation opportunity. So the purpose of this plan is to define a set of strategies that can be employed to ensure that the public is not only informed, but also provided ample opportunity to participate in the process of crafting the city's Malupa compliant land use plan. The strategies outlined in this document will provide a framework for continuous and extensive public engagement. Public engagement is critical because the final adopted plan, including any amendments or updates, comprises the basis for implementing zoning and subdivision regulations that must be in substantial compliance with the plan. Additionally, the scope of an opportunity for public participation and comment on site-specific development that is in substantial compliance with the land use plan is limited only to impacts or significantly increased impacts not considered in the land use plan, zoning regulations or subdivision regulations. The opportunity to be engaged comes with the process establishing the plan and regulations, not with review of a site-specific project. So just holler if you want to change anything. So I did see that Kalispell tweaked the graph just a little bit, changed the cups, but so land use plan and future land use map, right? That's our big picture. Creation of a land use plan and land use map will allow for the greatest opportunity for public involvement. Zoning and subdivision regulations, the drafting of new zoning and subdivision regulations will allow for written and verbal public comment and analysis and response to public comments by city staff. And then public notice of administrative decisions, the opportunity for public involvement in future developments conforming to the land use plan, zoning and subdivision regulations will be limited. So then land use plan, that we used to call our growth policy, land use plan and future land use map. The intent of the land use plan is to identify opportunities for the development of land within the city and its greater jurisdictional area for housing, businesses, agricultural, public lands, institutions, and the allocation of natural resources. The plan will acknowledge and address impacts of development on adjacent properties, the community, the natural environment, public services, facilities, and address potential natural hazards that may limit development in certain areas of the city. Accompanying the land use plan will be the future land use map, similar to our map on the wall, that establishes the city's expected jurisdictional area and future land use boundaries.
Susan, if I'm reading that right, so city's expected jurisdictional area and future land use boundaries. So this plan will consider future annexations, and that is correct?
That's correct.
Correct. That's why the plan requires that, the housing study to determine, projected population growth, housing inventories, and then areas where that inventory could be expanded to, essentially absorb the increase in population over time. And so the plan is a 20-year plan. So that would be kind of the annexation boundary, so to speak, of the growth policy would look out 20 years and, in anticipation of that, and select a land use and density for a particular area. And then, for example, if somebody annexed, the plan would then predict the zoning and density of that given area.
Okay. And I'm just gonna try to clarify this a little bit because these are questions we get from, the public all the time. It's like the donut is disappearing. So the city does not have any authority or will soon not have the authority to make planning decisions in the donut. But things that come out of this map and this process will be predictive, say, if this area right outside the city were to be annexed, we see it as CR3 or R2 or whatever. Am I stating that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. And just, that concept isn't new. So a lot of the cities don't have a donut, but their growth policies extend outside their city limits boundaries, so that for just this purpose of something's annexed, it basically has a predictable land use and intensity.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we're going to be covering the Helena plan in the same level of specificity, but I would like to interject and say that I appreciated the specificity to which the Helena paragraph related to this particular topic included the 20-year housing benchmark as their goal in the language itself. So just a minor note that I do think it's important that folks understand that the 20-year housing is the overall goal by which the lens is going to be held to the future land use map.
Yeah, it is. Do you want me to go there now?
Sure, if you can just do that now.
I can.
Because the rest of the committee, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I figured we'd go through one in detail, the first one, Kalispell, and then we could pull some things like Justin Pink had done there that we'd like to have the other. So that's a great way, if you know that something's here, we can just pull it in right now and talk about it.
Yeah.
So you can see on the top of 19 that the accompanying the land use plan, the sentence continues beyond and future land use boundaries required to meet housing requirements over the next 20 years as defined in the land use. So that probably is a good addition.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Since that's in the code. So.
It's the reason behind the LUPA, right?
It's connected, right? That was a major change to a growth policy or a land use plan.
Yeah. Justin, thank you for bringing that up. That's a great addition. And it sounds like everyone on this committee wants to put that in there. Okay. Otherwise, Susan, when you get yourself back and we're going to walk us through the Kalispell plan.
Yep, page 6. So so zoning and subdivision regulations. So after the planning commission recommends to the council to adopt the land use plan, and the map, then you move on to your zoning and subdivision regulations, right? The next bucket. So, the city will review its zoning and subdivision regulations to ensure their alignment with the land use plan upon adoption. That is very similar to what the city's done in the past. If there's been anything in the growth policy, then you go to that next level. The MALUPA requires that city zoning and subdivision regulations meet its specific statutory requirements. Of course, they did throw some other stuff in there. The zoning and subdivision regulations adopted by the city council through recommendation of the planning commission will set forth the administrative and decision-making processes of the city. So that, I think that's pretty straightforward. That'll be the second set of, well, third, actually, right? Public participation plan, land use plan and map, and then zoning and subdivision regulations. So then it is, what should you expect from us? So at a minimum, the city and its consultants must allow the community access to draft planning documents and regulations, an opportunity to provide written and verbal comments, the chance to be heard at public meetings, a pathway for electronic communication to address any questions or concerns involving the planning and implementation processes, documents, comments, or any updates to the process, and analysis of and response to public comment. And then the public participation plan establishes the framework detailing our commitment to public involvement throughout the process of adoption, amendment, modification, or rejection of any future land use plan, zoning, or subdivision regulation. Pretty straightforward, and here I think one of the biggest changes is the analysis of, like, historically in that process, you hear public comment, but there's not an specific response, which I think came about in this, that it's frustrating to everybody, right? Because you want to say, well, wait, I have that answer, but that's not on the public comment process, so this changes that.
So this specifies not only that we
You're
will
gonna
receive
analyze
public
it and
comments, but
respond.
we will analyze it and respond to it.
Yes,
Um,
which I think that was on both sides,
Yeah,
right? The public and planning boards and council saying, this doesn't work, or it doesn't seem to work. Not like we want it to.
Right.
So public participation principles. So again, these, like in that template, this all came about from the preparation of 382 and the adoption and the governor's housing task force and so forth. So public participation principles. City staff and its consultants will be guided by the following principles: thought and purpose. Public participation helps bring thought and meaning to our planning and decision-making process. The values imparted into planning and regulation documents through public participation will help preserve the city's culture, identity, and prosperity. And I will say that, like now, some of that language is in our growth policy. It's just used a little bit differently, but we had to identify culture, strengths, weaknesses, and so on. But this, it just spelled it out clearer. So thought and purpose, respect and inclusion. Every member of our community has intrinsic value and adds its ever enriching and endearing character. It is our goal to ensure that all members of the community feel welcome to participate in the planning process and have their voice heard. Transparency and trust. Clear communication will be provided at each step of the planning process, and the city will retain all material from public participation events as part of the public record in accordance with the retention schedule published by the Secretary of State. Open, adaptable, and evolving. It is important to maintain a continuous dialogue between community members and the city consultants and contractors. Likewise, it is imperative that we continue to seek out new means and methods for improving communication and engagement activities through evaluation of participant feedback and public comment.
I'm just a quick pause, because I'm tracking with both the Helena one, and right under the title, public participation, principles. Helena did call out city staff, consultants, and contractors. And it was kind of interesting, in Calco didn't call it contractors, but then does make reference to it in item 4. So I didn't know whether or not that's something that's necessary for us to consider. So references like type 7, right when we introduced it, we just refer to city staff and its consultants, not including contractors, but then bullet 4 adds contractors in there. So I don't know from a consistency standpoint whether it's valuable or not.
I wonder what contractors are we referring to?
That's kind of where I was at. I don't know whether or not consultants and the contractors would be really viewed as any different.
I think they're synonymous, but, or if you wanted to add it, you could, I mean,
Yeah, or maybe just even striking contractors from that sense.
Having the consistency,
That's all I was kind of thinking, kind of consistency,
yeah, so I think that the point they're getting at, there's any agent of the city.
yeah.
And so whether it's one or the other, just so we don't have conflicting language on that, so.
Yeah, because you're right, Helen is, that first sentence says staff, consultants, and contractors, and the bullet 4 is the same.
Yeah.
So you want to just say staff and consultants, strike contractors in paragraph 4.
I could go either way, like, but I think it'd probably be worth being consistent.
Yeah, I'm also, either way, I don't know if there's from a planner or legal standpoint, there's a reason to have or not have it in there, but I just think we should be consistent.
City contractors, the word contractors is really only in reference, as you know, to people that are contracted by the city as opposed to employed. So I think Darian's idea of just saying agents of the city captures consultants and contractors.
All right. Then I will follow our lawyer's advice.
The city and its agents. So we're striking consultants and contractors, including the agents of the city.
Yeah,
That's what I,
because it's,
Yes.
I mean, it follows along with the law of agency.
okay,
And then just make sure bullet point or reflects that same language.
Yeah,
all right. Okay, so goals and objectives. And again, it pretty much follows the guidelines, of course, but city staff and its agents will strive to achieve the following goals and objectives when engaging the public. Goal number 1, create consistency. Create a consistent approach to communication, including clear expectations for where information can be found, aim to improve current technology, create better processes, and continue to explore new methods of communication. Objective A, create communication expectations, standardize how, when, and where information will be communicated to the public. Objective B is to improve customer communication, standardize publication of planning department projects to the city website, periodically review communication processes and tools to evaluate their effectiveness. Goal 2 is to engage the public. Receiving public involvement in planning and decision-making is critical. We are committed to improving and increasing access to public participation opportunities and periodically refining engagement expectations. So under that, objective A is to create public engagement expectations. We will identify ways to engage the public through multiple platforms. And objective B is to improve public written comments and feedback. We will identify and provide an easily accessible pathway to receive and retain written public comments, and will provide analysis and feedback when necessary. So far, so good. So participation framework and tools. In concert with the goals, there is a wide range of public engagement strategies that will be employed by the city. The strategies are provided to set consistent expectations for public communications and involvement opportunities. This is an adaptable framework. The following tools are not all encompassing, but are instead intended to provide examples of types of public engagement which can be utilized in an effort to elicit robust public participation. Depending upon the specific platform, opportunities for written and verbal comments should typically be provided along with an analysis of and response to those comments. So the information tools, the following methods may be used for sharing information, including dissemination of draft documents about the adoption of or updates to the land use plan, zoning regulations, and subdivision regulations. So the legal notice in public newspaper or other means, that's in statute 714127 Montana Code Annotated. I will say that recently at the chamber, I asked how many people read the public notices, and no one else's hand went up. Maybe they just didn't want to, but I do read those notices. Notification of adjacent properties when required. Current statute is 150 feet. In some situations, seeking input from individual impacted properties, and of course, our city website, including access to information regarding the adoption process, documents, updates, and comments, social media, news, media, and advisory. So the engagement tools, the following methods may be used for gathering public input about the adoption of or updates to the land use plan, zoning regulations, and subdivision regulations. Meetings with community groups, meetings with city boards, surveys and comment forms, planning commission work sessions. And then they know typically would occur after their regular meetings, which are held, theirs at the 6 p.m. We've also just incorporated work sessions within, like, we don't necessarily separate it, right? Like, I guess this would be considered a work session. So planning commission work session, charrettes, storefront and pop-up studios, open houses, and presence at public events. We used a lot of these when we did the last growth policy. The 18 months of meetings and attending the community market and trying to we did a survey and we kicked stuff off. So very similar. Continuous information and involvement. So the drafting and adoption of the land use plan and subsequent land use regulations will be an extensive process, providing opportunities for continuous community engagement and feedback. Those who wish to remain involved throughout the planning process can stay up to date on the current events by following the city's website or by contacting our planning office. Obviously, we update that to ours. All public engagement material will be retained as public record and be available upon request. So participation feedback. Feedback from community members on the adequacy of public involvement opportunities and feedback on lessons learned from participation events is essential to ensuring a healthy communication stream. Using this combination of feedback, staff and working partners will determine next steps to ensure continuous public engagement. Staff and consultants will also provide an analysis and response to public comments and engagement activities. So yes, it's repetitious, but you can tell, I mean, that's the point, right? That we're going to engage, we're going to have feedback. It's more of a two-way street. So, and then is there anything before we go to that next section? So then the last one then is subsequent site-specific development. So this is kind of that big change, right? Instead of the engagement, the major engagement is with an application. Now the major engagement is upfront. So subsequent site-specific development, the MALUPA establishes a different process for land use decisions than what has, there's a typo in our sister city, previously been used in Montana. The changes will front load public input with limited public involvement during land use permit and application reviews, including subdivisions. Any public notice or input will be governed by the applicable MALUPA section or local zoning and subdivision regulations. The scope of an opportunity for public participation and comment on site-specific development that is in substantial compliance with the land use plan is limited only to impacts or significantly increased impacts not considered in the land use plan, zoning regulations, or subdivision regulations. The opportunity for the public to be engaged comes with the process establishing the plan and regulations, not with review of a site-specific project.
All right, so that's the end of the Kalispell section. And I will ask our committee and or our staff if there are any other parts of the Helena plan, which as we said is very similar with some small differences. Are there any other parts in the Helena plan that we want to pull out and discuss that we like or don't like? And we'll do public comments from you guys in a couple minutes, okay? Thank you. But with that, is anything from our committee or Justin online up there?
I do have one question for us to discuss, and there's a striking difference, I think, at the end of the Helena document relative to the Kalispell document that talks about the appeal of land use decisions. And whether or not that's important to include in the adoption of ours is, I think, just something that should be discussed explicitly.
Can you tell me what page you're on there?
Sure, one moment, please. Let me check back here. It's under the next steps of the Helena plan, which is actually page 26 of the PDF, the last page. That's where the language seems to just differ fairly significantly from what Kalispell offers. And I'm not certain that I have an opinion as to one way or the other. But I think it's important that we chat about this.
Great point. Everyone, I'm sure here's reviewing that, and we'll talk about it in a second. Let's get a thought.
So that is accurate, Mr. Ping, that upon adoption of the land use plan, and as we move towards compliance by May of 2026, that the planning commission will then hear the appeal. The planning commission becomes the planning board and board of adjustment. So, section is subject to. At this phase, public input will be limited. Not private. I mean, that's how the statute is set up.
So if I'm correct, this is spelling out what the statute says. Because it's not like we didn't put that in there, this would not be the process,
Right.
but this is spelled out explicitly. And I guess, yeah, for the benefit of the public and all, this would be nice to have it explicitly spelled out first.
Just put it all in one document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, Justin, thank you. So I think we discussed that we want to put that language in what we do, is that correct? That's what I'm hearing from the board?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts about that one? So before we move forward here, what I just tell you what I envision is this process of talking about this right now. I want to, since it's new business, I want to give the audience a brief opportunity if they see something that concerns them, that they would like to see addressed in this, you can step up, briefly give your name and address, and let us know what that thing is. But remember that this is not your only opportunity for public comment. What we're doing here is we're putting together a draft. That draft will be, typed up. It'll be available before our next meeting so that you can take a look at the draft. We can take a look at the draft. Then have a public hearing on it, change whatever we want to change on it, and then it goes to the city council who actually approves it. Correct on that? That the council does that. So if you're still unsure on some of this, and you don't feel like you have to get up and commit to something right now, like we welcome feedback right now, but this is a multi-stage process in the forum to establish the multi-stage process for communication. So and then once we get any comments from the audience, then the commission, we will finalize our thoughts, put it together, and direct city staff to put something together first. Does that sound good, everybody?
Sounds great.
So with that, anyone wishing to discuss this or give us some thoughts, please approach the podium, give us your name and address, and limit your comments to 3-ish minutes, please.
And Scott Merkel, 520 Bedrock Drive. I am wondering about a definition of our community members versus the public. I'm aware most of us in the room are not city people and can't sit on the council. And I'm just aware there's no definition in there that really makes us specifically welcome. Yeah.
That's a great question, and I will rephrase that and kick it to our city planner and city attorney. Is the public, or is there any distinction to say only city residents and their opinions matter, or does everyone's matter no matter who you are?
Public's the public, so it doesn't matter where you live or when we got a public hearing, anybody can comment and give their opinions.
And everyone's opinion will be heard and responded to in the same way that a city resident or non-city resident. It doesn't matter where you live or who you are, correct?
I'm just aware of the wording in the document earlier, where it does say our community members.
Mhm. So even when we can, 1 second. Actually, well, we'll sit on that for a second and acknowledge that. Lucy, please, go ahead. Make a note about the community member and how we bring them.
Lucy Yates, 315 Shooting Star Drive, Columbia Falls. Yeah, 'cause I'm kind of thinking the donut will be no more, but now I'm hearing you're gonna have a 20-year plan, right, where expected growth, which obviously is gonna go outside of our current city limits, you're gonna look towards what might be annexed. So that puts a different spin on it for me, because I understand that this commission was limited to city residents, correct?
That's correct.
There's kind of a catch-22 in there for me, because we're talking 20 years, then we're gonna be, outside of our current city limits. If we're still looking for another member to entertain the idea of someone outside the city limits, but also will you be doing, you as a commission be doing a housing study or the study? How will this be projected?
I will direct that question to our city manager and planner for how the housing study will be conducted.
So the housing study will be conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Department of Commerce. And we'll do a request for proposals. So it'll be a consultant, an independent consultant will perform the housing study in concert with the task force at Department of Commerce. We have submitted an application cross our fingers, for a $30,000 grant to help pay for that. But the requirements are really clear. It's an independent, there'll be a professional consultant performing the housing study.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment?
Shirley Polkline, 285 Shooting Star Drive, Columbia Falls. Trying to pull my thoughts together here, so, in regards to what Lucy was speaking about, it's kind of that same catch-22 that we've been living with forever here, that those of us that live outside of the city, know that the city is coming, but it's, I mean, yeah, there's public participation, but it's messy, using that professional word. I actually stopped in at the county planning office this past week just to start building some relationships with them, since I know that we're going to be passed off to them for those of us that live outside of the city limits. And I've been thinking about it. Well, basically what I was told is that they're not even thinking about this whole thing because of the litigation that's against Senate Bill 382, that they haven't even started doing anything about this. So, which is interesting, but as I'm thinking about it, I would really encourage you all to reach out to the county planning department and try and do some kind of cooperative sort of work. I mean, you know, look at their planning or lack thereof planning for outside of the city limits, and include we as the public that are going to be impacted by all of that. And yeah, I know that we have a difficult time with some of the other entities in this area, but I like the wording of some of this, because it really does incorporate the idea of, and like Susan was saying, of a continual circle of continual communication and working together. And so I would encourage you to expand your, to reach out to them too. And if there's any way that I or the Upper Platted Neighborhood Association could be a part of that, I think we'd be glad to help out with that. So, I have a whole lot of other comments, but I'll save those for some other time.
Thank you, Shirley. Yeah, please.
Thanks. My name's Mark Waldo, 183 Middleview Trail, which is down 206 near Elm Park Road, so I'm outside your city limits. I'm a licensed architect, background in development and residential, multi-unit housing in Philadelphia for the housing authority there, concept developments for hotels in Jersey along the shore, work in San Francisco, Victorian renovations, custom homes like you see here in Whitefish. I'm just heads up, I'm very concerned about this just because I think it paints a broad picture of intense public involvement. But in my experience, people don't know until they see it. I sent a letter email to you, Susan. I don't know, Ms. Nicosia, if you can present an image that showed up in your email on the screen, but it's going to be critical to this process to paint scenarios for people, because I don't think people are going to understand could happen on a property unless they see specific before and afters. I sent you an image. I don't know if you can present it.
Did you just send it?
I did, and I can present it maybe at another meeting, but it's just typical of the kinds of things that you'll need to show people because, I don't think anybody in my neighborhood understands the level of development that can happen in that area and will occur to them. And under this, what's going to happen is people are going to see specific developments, but they will not be able to comment on them. They'll have to go up into zoning and then come back. And that's an incredible timeline. And so I think there's going to be a lot of frustration unless, unfortunately, you put a lot of time into showing people exactly what can be built.
Yeah, that's great.
Mr. President, just to reply, I can't do that right now. It doesn't always work for me to do that, but out in the county, Flathead County is not subject to Senate Bill 382. So what we're talking about now doesn't apply to where we live.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should be specific. I know we've had conversations and I'll be doing work here in the city, so I'll be impacted on it. It's just a profession.
Right, but I'm saying that, yeah, so out there, so that Flathead County isn't part of this process.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that the city will probably experience this stuff. I sent an illustration about Flathead County, but I think it would be helpful for the city to understand.
And then, so we have an excellent working relationship with Flathead County. And the planning and zoning office, speak frequently. And so there are those conversations, about the transition. So there are, out of the 10 cities that this changed, so it's actually unusual to have a donut now. The segue has been not to have a donut. We have the donut of the blessing of Flathead County. So as we segue out from that, but it's normal, the growth policy, it actually works. Like zoning doesn't go away. Like CR1, like recently we did a conditional use permit for some property to the north. And the neighbor comment was, I thought you lost this jurisdiction. And I said, well, not yet, right? There's a phasing. But I said, but zoning doesn't just go away. The county, so decades ago when we inherited the donut, or were blessed with the donut, we inherited like the county CR1, right? So the zoning that's here will stay in place. So if the county, right, the county takes over that zoning stays in place until they change it. Because back in the day, it was FERDA, the Flathead Regional Development Office, that did the county and the 3 cities. Like our CR1 language is very close to that one because they used to be almost identical, or they were identical, right? It was the same office. So the zoning doesn't go away, but it's not like the growth policy. So for the other cities throughout this state, majority of 127 cities and towns, yes, you do have what does the picture look like as far as that firm zone, you know, like what gets built there, that would be the county unless they annex in. So it is, we're actually in the minority. I think there were 2 of the 10 cities that had a donut. Yeah, had a donut, but it's Laurel and Billings, right? So, and Laurel is the other city with us that has a consultant that doesn't have a planning. So, but yeah, and they're the only other incorporated city, right? Or, anyway, so it's not that far fetched from what everybody else is doing, across the state.
Thank you, Susan. Mike?
Mike Burr, 560 Calvert Road. Two things, back to the question someone had about, is public comment equal, you're a city person or a outside the deal? And it seems like you guys are wanting the comment to be equal.
Wanting it is.
Well,
But yes.
I bring this up because it's come out in other hearings that we've got city issues that outside city people are commenting, and it's brought up in the paper and brought up that they aren't equal. So I think if they are equal, then if you can say it in this document somehow that the comments are weighted equally, and somehow, you know, you could have a whole bunch of people outside the city. I mean, if it was a voting thing, and have it equally weighted, and not anybody in the city wanting to do anything about it, and have it overrun. So I think somehow defining the value of comments, whether you live in the city or you're just outside in that area that could be annexed in the next 20 years. And the people outside they could go ahead and say, let's annex my property, and then they're in the city. I mean, that's one solution for them, isn't it? I mean, that's certainly a way that they could go. So I somehow making that so that the people are feeling warm and welcome to come comment, whether they live 2 blocks from City Hall or they live across the river or up the North Fork or something, because it will impact. And then the second thing is, I mean, this document, you're really trying to get people to participate, and that's wonderful. And I turn around and I see this, great people showing up, but how many are from the city? I mean, you can't bring people, make them go to the trough and drink, but somehow we've got to get word out. I mean, in these documents, try to address that, to get word out. And I don't know if it can go in the power bill or their water bill or some kind of notice to get to people, and generate a little more comment here, because you know what's gonna happen. Something get adopted, then something get proposed, and that's when everybody will be up in arms and busloads. So, you know, this is the start of a turnout, but somehow we've got to get more. Just, you know, I don't know how it's done. I mean, I sure encourage people to come and
Thanks, Mike.
So I need some clarification from what Susan was saying. So am I understanding correctly, when you say the zoning's not going away, so the property like the east of the river, that's outside of, that's outside of the city will still be zoned. They'll still maintain that zoning.
Until
And it'll just
legally
become
changed.
county zoning rather than
That's
city.
correct. That's correct. And that's correct with any zone, right? The zoning just doesn't get wiped out. So where a large part of the county to the south is unzoned, but this zoning stays in place until it's legally changed.
So how did it,
Whitefish is the perfect example to address your question, I think. So Whitefish had a donut, just like ours. They had extraterritorial zoning outside of their city limits, just like we do. When the city of Whitefish lost their donut, state statute states that the county can take back the donut if they incorporate zoning. Basically, they have to replace the zoning that's there. And it was the policy of the county with Whitefish, and I'm sure it would be the same here, they replaced it with like zoning. So if you had a CSAG 10, they would give it their SAG 10. If you had a CR1, they would give it their R1. So they basically give it like for like, so if it was,
But they're not identical.
they're damn near identical.
Almost.
They line them up, I know, because they're, for a while, there were significant.
Yeah, they're pretty darn similar, but and in some ways, you know, the minor differences in the zoning is, you know, ours might be a little more, allow a couple more uses, or theirs might allow a couple more uses, but they're pretty much similar. The densities are essentially. But, so that is the process. So when the city relinquishes the donut, the county takes it over, they go through a process of converting the city zoning to a county zoning. And it goes through a public process.
So when you all are developing the land use plan for the city, will you be making changes in this map? Or will this zoning, et cetera, stay the way that it is? Do you have the option to make some changes?
So for clarification, there's a difference between the zoning, right? Zoning is, goes through that legal process, right? It's adopted, the growth, and so this map, so you can see the difference. This is the future land use map currently. This is that big picture. This is what we think is there. So then, but this is what's there. So so
Zoning implements the growth policy.
Right.
Zoning implements the land use plan. So in the process, if we change something from suburban residential to urban residential, then that would predict a urban residential zone. If we, and generally speaking, because this plan is gonna be more focused on the city, it's gonna be more urban, it's where our city infrastructure, our sewer, water, stormwater infrastructure is. When we essentially, the city, when they annex, they're usually always providing their sewer, water, and stormwater. And to make sewer, water, and stormwater extensions feasible, you have to have density. You can't have, you know, 5-acre lots on city sewer and water, because they would cost $1 million a lot, because your extensions are so expensive per lineal foot. And if you're crossing 500 feet of lot with a sewer line, it's just not feasible to do that. So the city is going to always be more compact than the county. So that's just generally a very general idea of what the cities are looking at in our zoning. So our zoning, you know, we have our RA1, our apartment zoning. There's very little apartment zoning in the county. The only places you'll see apartment zoning in the county are areas that do have public sewer and water, like Big Fork, Lakeside, Evergreen, places like that.
So big picture look, and it's always been 20 years. Like, and so that didn't change in this new land use plan. What really changed is that you bolster it with more details, right? Because now, like the housing plan, that wasn't a part of the growth policy in the past. So now it's like, all right, if they, depending on what the planning commission looks at, like through the public process, what do we see? And then what's that housing study? What's that predictor? So there's more meat to it, but it is that big picture. It's not as regulatory. I mean, like I said, this stand, like this is SEG 10. You can see, if you look at the Atlantic County SEG 10 and our SEG 10, that's kind of a holdover from when they blessed us with the donut in the past, and some of that we just left in place, Flathead County zoning. So, but there's a difference between future land use map and zoning map. So, but yeah, so that big picture and then just the details. So we've always looked at that 20-year lookout and then updated on the 5-year plan. So Helena's plan added a little bit more, under the introduction. I think, Mr. Payne noted that there's more detail, or was that you, Mr. Kavanaugh, that said there's more fluff, right? Maybe not more fluff, but more, and it comes back to communicating, right? Like, this basically condenses that big long statute and puts it in more clear language, but they added, Helena had in the introduction a little bit more information. They started a year before us, so throughout they had 3 years, we have 2 years, right? 2026, 2-year process for adoption. They added and subsequent 5-year updates and so on. So I think that's what you guys pointed out earlier, is that there's a little bit more information. And maybe it was new, right? And Helena adopted theirs in 2023. Helena was one of the first ones to adopt the public participation plan, because they were already working on updating their land use plan. So, I mean, we were all kind of almost on that same schedule, but if the board thinks that it's beneficial to add a little bit more language, because then when the public reads it, they don't have to go look at the statute, or they don't have to read anything else. And maybe that was the goal with Helena. We'll put a little bit more in here. Here's the template, here's the information that has to go out. But, it's the same process we've used in the past to get to, the painstaking process of going through every chapter and natural resources and strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. But if you guys want to add more of the Helena language about the public involvement in that decision-making process and the adoption of the land use plan and subsequent 5-year updates, I think maybe that's helpful.
Sure. Briefly, is there anyone else in the audience who wanted to comment before we get to board deliberations, board discussion? I see no one else comment at this time. So yeah, with what we've heard, from comments and what we've heard from staff, what are some thoughts? Sam, here at my side, I'll ask you first.
I mean, looking at these two cities and the documents they put together, I look at some of the stuff that Helena contributed to. I don't know that it really goes to answering the questions or better defining their community. They kind of added a little bit more robust language around inclusivity and inclusion, diversity, and equity. But I don't know, I guess my concern is that I don't know that just adopting their language is really going to speak to making someone feel as though their comment is being equally valued. I guess, so I guess my thought there is that that's something we have an interest in doing, I need to drive language and explore that idea. And as I've been listening here, I'll be honest, when I hear community and I think of community, I think of our outlying areas. And, having served on the planning board, I certainly know for myself, and I think I speak for all the planning board members, that we've always valued everyone's opinion that's come there, regardless of what the outcome has been. That's always been really valued. So I respect how we articulate that. But I also, at the same time, I do really want this practice to genuinely be open to the public, right? I mean, I think we all do, and it's part of why we're applying the fact that we have an avenue to actually comment back, right? And answer some of those questions that historically we just haven't had to really do. And perhaps that's how we got there. Is making sure when we do those analysis, the thoughts of our comments, articulates to the community that they are heard.
Anything else at this time?
Not at this point.
Mark, can I turn to you?
Yeah, I would agree with Sam. I hear the public's comment on being included, and I sit here and I look at, you know, item 2, respect and inclusion. I don't know how you draft that language to make it sound more inclusive than it could. So right now says every member of our community has a tremendous value and adds to its ever enriching and endearing character. It is our goal to ensure that all members of the community feel welcome to participate in the planning process and have their voice heard. I don't know how much clearer you can make that. I understand where people are coming from, but I would say on community and public, it's all of us, and I don't.
Any other thoughts right now? Justin is ping on Zoom. Would you like to contribute anything?
Nothing that we've already covered. If language is adopted, I think, to try to include everyone, perhaps it's community members and members of, you could say even adjacent communities, in case that, you know, might help muddy the waters for some folks. Just so that, you know, you are able to comment on any proceedings that, even if you're not in the immediate vicinity. So if there is language that we can include eventually, just to help clear that up, since we've heard it from multiple folks, then I would support that. Again, don't have a great answer of what that might mean currently.
Can I speak to that?
So is that Justin saying, are you offering some language for us?
No, I wanted to speak to that. This proposed distinction between city residents and non-residents. I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about, and that's what some of the members of the public were getting at. And I would heavily discourage making a distinction between those two groups, city residents and non-residents. There is nothing that distinguishes between those groups in the Constitution and state statute. And I would really advise that the city stay away from language that puts some kind of written requirement that the city treat comments by city residents equally to the comments by people not living within the city. The fact is that the public, that word encompasses all. Doesn't matter where you live. It could be from out of state, it could be from a different country, and, you know, attend these meetings and make a comment. I see that creation of a distinction in that language is just unnecessarily creating an opportunity for people to claim liability against the city in a lawsuit, because, well, it's written down that you're supposed to treat these two groups the same, but you didn't. Why create that liability for yourself?
I appreciate your insight, Justin. Thank you.
Yep.
And, you know, I'll just chime in. I thought Mark said it well, that point number 2, the respect and inclusion paragraph. Yeah, I could probably wordsmith that for a day and still not come up with anything better than that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, where I think we've added the things we want to put in already through our discussion. Nixed some of the things we haven't. We'll listen to our good legal advice and leave the word community in there in that second note, and just knowing what community and public legally means in the state of Montana. We will not overly fuss with that language. So go ahead. Sam.
Yeah, there might be some merit to adding a little bit, beefing up our introduction and making reference to the 5-year update. Again, just for the sake of having a little bit more of the act and what the act is actually going to expect us to do, or, you know, Helena's is not considerably longer from an introduction standpoint, but it does just, I think, does benefit a little bit, and saying land use, will be more limited for the adoption of this land use plan, as public involvement, the administrative decision-making process will be more limited after the adoption of this land use plan and subsequent 5-year updates. And just, I think, really articulating the vitality of active public involvement, early on in the document is probably valuable. Read that, because I think we all agree, like, that's what we want, right? We want, if there was a goal, it would be to have active public involvement in this plan. So Helena's was on 16, is that right?
And I'm just comparing it to the council right now. Yeah, because Cal has some of that language in there, the
And potential subsequent 5-year updates.
public involvement during the process is vital. So maybe, what I think I'm hearing from Sam and maybe propose to our staff is just to make sure that we're possibly add some language, maybe hear from Helena, just to accentuate the vitality of the public involvement process. And I think that also takes a step back with the 5-year reviews to make sure that some of the things like the 5-year review spelled out in our public plan, so that the public wouldn't have to go read the full document to know that that is a requirement we have for the 5-year review. I think that would be, I'm gonna agree with Sam, that'd be nice to add in there. And as we're crafting this language, I think the direction I'm hearing from the board is we don't want to overly complicate this public participation plan. But the more succinct information we can put in here that sums up what's in the law, so that people don't have to refer to the law and say, like, how many times do they review this? When does this happen? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's, yeah.
Yeah, that's good language to add. We can certainly do that.
Okay.
Meld those two.
And I just know the questions that we've already received, so maybe that was a good idea.
So do we have any further thoughts from staff or, pardon me, from our board before we direct staff to write this? Are there any questions that staff is unclear about what you want from us?
Clear.
Okay, and this doesn't require a motion or anything, does it? We've had this in discussion and we're telling you what to do. That's
Yeah, basically it's consensus at this point.
Okay.
Of the board, and we, I think, got that, and then of course, we'll give you a draft, and that's totally fair game to change and add and bring.
okay. Great, so then just a reminder to the public again, for this process, staff will draft language based on our discussion tonight. The Monday before our next Thursday meeting, that draft along with our agenda and minutes from this meeting will be posted on the city website. We can access it, and then we will have a meeting to discuss that public participation plan and either revise, amend, or leave it as it is, and then send it on to the city council for their approval. Is that
You'll
correct?
hold a hearing, so we would give notice that
Okay.
at your May 9th meeting that you'll consider the draft of the public participation plan. And your agenda would be written that way, so you'd have a public hearing on that draft and an action item to recommend approval to.
Okay. Great. Yeah, there's. So is there any other business that's come before the council? Sam, Mark, Justin, Dane? All right, seeing no other business, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Also move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for zooming in, thank you all for